Our economic system is underpinned by the services of nature and the stability and resilience it provides. But flaws in the finance system have helped tarnish our natural world.
The impact of climate change and nature loss becomes increasingly difficult to predict into the future and even more complex to ensure.
What's the point of receiving the pension when our children cannot even play outside?
Revolutions happen when the majority of people think that it's a mistake to try and block change.
In the terminology, it would be a climate Minsky moment. And that's what we need to avoid, which is why we need to start moving today.
Do we invest money in the practices that take us deeper into this crisis, or in the solutions that could get us out of it?
Our finance sector has unwittingly bankrolled the destruction of the very natural systems it relies upon.
Since the Paris Accord was signed in 2015, banks globally have continued to invest $1.9 trillion into the fossil fuel industry, and that's despite knowing where that's leading and what the consequences are.
The financial system is not doing a great job of distinguishing between good and bad growth.
Putting ourselves on a trajectory to devastate the natural world and our way of life forever. But our future doesn't have to be this way. Our finance system needs systemic change.
The financial sector is an enormously powerful and effective force and can be a force for good.
No sector is better placed to drive the transition to a sustainable economy than the finance sector itself.
The public needs you to take the lead and needs you to be brave.
And building a better system can start now, with 5 key actions. As we move to a sustainable economy, all companies, banks and investors will need to understand where they are vulnerable.
There's the physical risks. What will flooding, wildfires, and many other major events mean for the portfolios of banks? There's the reputational risk of not being seen to act on climate change or financing things that are creating other environmental or social consequences.
As companies adapt to meet net zero targets, they will also face transitional risks.
If we continue to downplay the scale of the transition across all economies around the world, then the adjustment, when it comes, will be much more severe. The biggest risk is inaction today.
The finance system has the ability to dial up the positive and drastically dial down the negative impacts of every decision made.
ESG, or environmental, social and governance reporting, should be the bare minimum for all companies.
ESG is great, but it's quite narrowly conceived at the moment.
We need to go much further.
What we need is for financial institutions to demonstrate and report on how they are reducing their impact on the natural world.
Those responsible companies that start accurately monitoring and reporting their impact and risks will thrive. Those that don't will be left behind. Shareholders are just one part of the picture. We need to recognise that investors, customers, employees, all stakeholders are changing.
So there's a really interesting shift, and I hear this from people who work in finance. They say, we've got new clients. It's actually opening up new demand in the financial sector to come up with financial portfolios that don't just extract revenue, but that invest in a future.
This changing financial landscape heralds the end of business as usual, but brings with it an exciting world of new opportunities.
Achieving net zero requires a whole economy transition. Every company, every bank, insurer, investor will have to adjust their business models. But doing so could turn an existential risk into the greatest commercial opportunity of our time.
The clean energy sector is already exploding. And the entire food sector is transforming too.
Within a decade, alternative meat proteins are expected to grab over 10% of the 1.4 trillion meat market.
Taking society and the environment into account in all our actions will soon be business critical. Fortunately for the finance sector, the opportunities and benefits to society are endless. We need to build a finance system which is recalibrated to the long term. One that is transparent, so all investors can see what their money is funding. And one that takes climate, nature, and social development into account in all financial decisions.
The finance sector plays a crucial role in the fight against climate change, but it cannot do it alone. We need a coordinated response across many sectors: government, energy, technology, the legislative and regulatory environment, bringing all these together to make a meaningful impact.
The thing that gives me hope is that people are rethinking how capitalism should be structured at the top table. It's huge. And if they're successful, then we will live in a much more sustainable future. If they do not succeed, then the economies will collapse and civilization itself is at risk.
As we navigate our way through the biggest economic crisis since the Second World War, the existential threats from climate change and nature loss are still looming. Now is the moment to reframe our idea of value and build a new system. One that will safeguard ourselves from future global shocks. If we do this, we'll be leaving a legacy of which we can feel justly proud.